In the name of God, the most beneficent, most merciful, peace be upon you, dear organizers and staff. Thank you very much for organizing this. I hope that we will have a series of these workshops and conferences to discuss this, how we will work on to read and understand this reality. This is requested from us as a message to be delivered so that we share playing the roles and not transferring them from one place to another. As an academician, I am also a citizen. I am working in the Haifa University, and I work in the planning center, and I work in politics, and I try to mix between the political, professional, and academic points in order to read this reality as a planner. In my lecture today, that I wish to finish in 10 to 15 minutes to express and communicate a message. I do not intend to necessarily communicate all the knowledge I have, but I would like to communicate a message through reality and through my perspective on Jerusalem, that is Jerusalem as a part of Palestine, but it is the state for reading the entire case of Palestine. Therefore, I do not want to discuss the theoretical framework of my lecture. However, I will briefly show you the matrix to control command and hegemony that is being exercised, because looking at the service of it as a colonial structure thing is not enough. In my opinion, it is very important to understand the tools, the mechanisms, and how to deal with them in order to come up with findings for our future. It is very important to see how they are projected on the past. My colleague Dr. Adel talked about what happened, but I think that one of the important things that we have not studied is how the military role was transferred after '67 to West Bank and Gaza Strip. When I studied this through planning, I found that the same tools are being continually used, and that the crises and the dilemmas and the Zion project finds itself in is how to deal with Palestinians in Gaza Strip and in West Bank and in Jerusalem. The Jerusalem population one in '67, 68,000. Now we are talking about 350,000. This data and statistics has big indications. Practically, we have a conflict on the area. There are structured affairs. There is symbolism about the naming mechanisms. Arabs of Israel, the 1948 Arabs, they are trying to categorize them in order to create a kind of identity to deform the situation. It's not only the space, it is the location that has its symbolism, and how geography affects that, and how demography and institutions can be preserved, and how a state of institutions deal with it in a selective way as a cases based on racial and ethnic affiliation. There is a mix of all of the my lecture would be about how the ideology is being exercised behind all of the project, including especially Jerusalem's, and the tools on how to deal with that I will briefly show in 10 minutes, and what are the mechanisms and how to apply them. You see it as very simple, but I notice how deep these tools are in order to achieve a bigger project, and I will try to foresee the situation in the future if the chairman allows me, and I would like to do that. In this slide that discusses all that's related to the matrix of control, the exercise that was done in a smart way in order to control the Palestinians, and in order to try to create a deformed identity, and at the same time to give them a psychological preparedness for immigration or displacement, as well as unconscious reintegration and the divisions of an entire community that's trying to create its own collective identity, but it has different identities based in different contexts, whether it is the equality sought by Arabs and Palestinians inside Israel, or those in Gaza Strip who are asking for liberation, and for those in diaspora who are homesick to return back, and how the Israelis are dealing with them. What is the Israeli approach in order to control the space through dividing it and controlling it and circumferencing it by the Israeli existence, and how it is dismembering the Palestinian existence. There is a very important point, is how the narrative and the language is being designed in order to engineer a local, regional, subjective and international awareness of that, whether it is with the Israelis or the Palestinians, how they are trying to engineer new language and new concepts in different cases. We as Arabs and Palestinians are absorbing these terminology. We are consuming them. This is why we need a new language, a new terminology to deal with that. When we study these cases, we don't find them as quiet or constant. They are moving with the context, with the conditions, with the circumstances. It's very important to realize that the 1948 language is not appropriate for 2019. We need to create a new language to secure our interests, our existence, and how to use the laws and mechanisms, and how the institutions, when we discuss institutions of society, civil society organizations as an example, for example, how to strengthen civil society organizations, the Palestinian ones inside Palestine, it is a very big question. There is a great criticism for these organizations. We should be able to exercise self-criticism in order to see a future. And this slide tells the entire story. I will not explain to you the control change since 1900s, early 1900s until now. We see how the project built itself in phases based on a future vision that's built on a religious ideology to have hegemony on the location by controlling the human resource, and in order and by using human resources to control the universities, to control land, to enact laws for the state, and the use of the international power that was there, and play on the international contradictions in order to exploit them to gain their own interest. When we take this in Jerusalem, we find that it was developed through these tools. Today, the heart, which is the old city, when we're talking about Jerusalem, we need to redefine it. In my study, when we read that about Jerusalem, we are there as Palestinian Arabs between Ramallah, Bir Zayt, and other areas. We are majority, although they say we are minority in the old parts of the area. We are the majority, but we are still having the minority mindset, the behavior of the minority, and we are being subject to the hegemony of the language and the prerequisites. Here we notice that some people still talk about the West Bank. 60% of that area, of sea area, is under the control of Jewish municipalities or Jewish municipal councils. 63% of it controlled, although there is 186 Palestinian villages and 350,000 Palestinians. without speaking about areas A and B, but we forgot the areas and the access of that. Today, some of the Israeli right demanding through the nation-state law to annex Area C, but it's not void of population. There is 186 villages, and there is the Bedouin community there, and the Palestinian cities are developing. It's very important to read that in our counter-planning. We have to deal with that in a way as a tool for Palestinian development and for Palestinian presence. And this thing, the matrix is composed of the land and how we can manage the land and how to use planning and control the borders and how to demark the borders. Once we define the status, there's a difference between the status and the position. The position is legal. We see here the Palestinian community. Even in the Jerusalem area, there are 5 types or categories of identities that are being used for the conflict of survival, and they are using it in a selective way. Therefore, this provides a double-faced definition. And in my opinion, we have to understand how the subjugation is being done for the temporary situation. We are struggling for survival here, and in many cases, we are not developing our tools for countering them. When it comes to the registering of lands, because of internal conflicts inside the community, this process is being hindered. We need to develop tools to deal with that. We need to understand the centrality of that. We need to refuse. We need to understand that the Israelis are refusing or are not willing to for Palestinians to participate in politics, and this creates some kind of defiance for the Israelis in their Zionist project. And this situation is in Jerusalem, like they give them the right to vote for the municipality, but not to vote for the parliament. Here we are talking about 280,000 votes, and we know that before 1948, the Israelis took control of the municipality. So here we have the providing the identities, revoking the identity cards. They revoked the identities of 25,000, but despite all of that, there is the wall that's being there, and there is the situation of how the country is being divided into statistical units. Here we see that division in order they're dividing it so that there is no majority in a specific area. The Israelis doing that so that they fragment Palestinians in Jerusalem in order to dismantle the possibility of having them returned into a Palestinian community. They are using this wall, using the planning tools and the rights to building. They preventing that inside the fenced area, like in areas of Kafata and Zaim and Ghram and many big neighborhoods that need that the relationship there should be good and should be integrated between the city and the suburbs. Here they are trying to cut the ties and connections between the cities and the suburbs so that the community outside the fence is a weak, divided community, and inside the fence, the municipality of Jerusalem, as per the Israeli definition, is a controlled one, and they control it through licensing constructions, and they are using that in order to displace the people. Before 1996, people used leave Jerusalem towards Ramallah, Ram, and Bir Rabala, but today they are trying to return. But this return is controlled since 1993, and in 2002 they started doing the apartheid war. I see the chairman telling me to conclude. Here I would like to tell you about this point. We have three central tools that are used. First, the building license, the real estate registration tool, and the demolition of buildings. There is an exceptional case in the world. A Palestinian citizen is demolishing his own house because of fear of fines. But in case they are building their house for their area, they are imposing fines on them that are about 300,000 shekels, which is about $70,000. And if they demolish their homes, they will be fined and they will demolish their own homes. This is an exceptional case in our country, and we know that since 1967, about 70% of Eastern Jerusalem, there is no reconciliation for lands. This means that we do not know whose ownership it is. We don't know who would own the lands after the death of somebody, and this would hinder the ownership. They do not say as that the people do not want it. They say that the government is not the problem. The problem is that you do not agree as the people. Through this tool, they push the people to emigrate to Ramallah, to Amman, to Birmingham, and to other areas in order to solve their life problems. Planning as a tool. Now I go to foreseeing the future and how the planning. And in this situation, we see that the visual basin, usually we say the holy basin, there is no visual basin. There is a visual basin. They try to preserve its distinguishability. They are trying to control it. They are to Judaize and Hebraize it. They are using limited building licenses as a tool. And here, I'm sorry for this long lecture. Here we see the future. The number of Palestinians, as per the expectations for the Israeli plan in 2000 would be 450,000. We're talking here about 2020, and another planning tool that's being created. Here we have 2 points. We have the official plans and we have the guiding plans. Today here they are talking about Jerusalem 2050. In this, they don't see the Palestinians. They are invisible here. Here we need an initiative, a Palestinian initiative planning, so that they create alternative for this situation. They should not be passive all the time. They should not be explainers and descriptors. We need to be working on that. I think we have enough resources to deal with this in our situation, and practically, if we see the current conflict situation, it will be a clashing situation that may create some kind of apartheid, but inside this space there is differences inside Palestine. The question is how to counter that on the ground through daily life, through supporting this by receiving international support, particularly Arab and Islamic support, so that we can struggle for survival, so that we stay in our country. And thank you very much indeed.